Welcome back to Bonfire Tells Stories, where the fire burns slow, the night listens close, and I, Jack, try to convince you that sleep is optional. Some people spend their weekends hiking, hunting, or getting back to nature. Cute idea, until nature decides it wants you back, piece by piece. Tonight's tale, let's just say it walks on hooves and human feet alike. So, pull your chair closer, keep your rifle clean, and remember, if something circles your tent more than once, it's not lost. They came for antlers and the clean arithmetic of the hunt. Ryan, Matt, Luke, and Derek rolled into the old growth like they owned the deeds to its shadows, a pickup coughing dust along a red clay road that threaded the interior of Piranha. They were practiced men, careful with rifles, careless with luck, fluent in the small talk of weather and brag. The forest met them with a hush that wasn't welcome or warning, just the indifference of something that had endured fire and flood and would endure them. The town behind them had a single bar and a single bartender who, when asked about the valley, dried a glass until the air went cold. "Don't camp by the river," he said, "and if you hear something walk in a circle, do not answer." He gave no price for the advice. Some debts are paid in silence. They met the old man at the edge where pasture surrendered to timber, barefoot, shirt faded to the color of old teeth. He had the leathery stillness of a stump that refused to rot. "The ones who walk upright here," he told them without preamble, "are neither man nor beast." He pointed past them to the trees. "Leave bread if you must leave anything. Never leave your name." Ryan smiled because someone had to. "We're just passing through." "Nothing passes through," the old man said, and made a circle in the dust with his heel. He didn't cross it. Neither did they. By mid-afternoon, they were under cathedral pines, where the light came down in columns and drifted like slow incense. The river they had been told to avoid sounded temptingly alive, riffles chanting over stone. They chose the high bank anyway, pitching tents where the ground held firmer and the wind could argue with the smoke. Knives unpacked, tarps thrown. The ordinary choreography of camping made them bigger, braver, men assembling small civilization against the grain. Tracks came first. Luke spotted them on a game trail, overprinted on older prints, as if something returned again and again to practice its own footsteps. Hoof marks, deer-sized, light, tidy, unhurried. Then, several paces later, bare human feet, longer than any of theirs, toes pressed into the mud like pale roots searching for purchase. Matt chuckled. Guy with a novelty costume. Viral video thing. Derek, who measured everything before dismissing it, crouched and touched the edge of a print. The mud lifted in a thin curl. "Fresh," he said. "Less than a day." He didn't add what he was thinking. That whatever made the human prints walked lighter than it should, the pressure points wrong, as if weight had been redistributed along a frame not built for standing. Ryan stood and scanned the tree line. The trunks were too regular and the spaces between them too narrow, an illusion that made distances lie. Something shifted, or the wind did, and pine needles hissed like 1,000 tiny arguments. They followed the track a little while because refusal is a kind of surrender and pride has its own compass. The hoof marks and the human feet braided, separated, then braided again. A strange duet, a waltz written for the wrong kind of legs. When the prints finally broke away toward denser brush, they let them go. You don't chase jokes into thickets. Not when dusk is a rumor and your tents are still breath warm from your hands. They cooked without conversation. Oil sang in the pan, and the smoke smelled of peppered meat and resin. In the receding light, the river took on the color of old coins. Somewhere, woodpeckers worked like patient carpenters. Somewhere farther, higher, a sound like a creaking hinge tree. Animal announced itself and faded. Night pooled. Shadows lengthened until they learned each man by name and sat among them. They staked a perimeter out of habit, gear inside the ark, rifles where hands could find them without thinking. The old man's warning drifted back and lingered uninvited. Ryan took first watch beneath a sky that showed more darkness than stars. He listened to the honest noise of a living forest. Crickets, water talking to stone, wind scrolling through needles. His breath. Then, under it all, something else. A steady cadence, measured and distant, as if a metronome had been tucked inside the trees. Not running, not creeping, walking. A circle traced by patient steps. He did not answer. He did not say a word. He simply stared into the trees until the fire popped like a knuckle and sent up a brief halo of sparks. When the sparks faded, the cadence kept going. It was the kind of sound you can mistake for your own pulse until it leaves your body and moves around you. By dawn, the forest looked almost merciful, mist coiled low, hiding its teeth. The men woke to dew and the thin promise of sunlight. Coffee hissed in a dented pot, and for a while, everything was simple. Warmth, caffeine, and the slow rhythm of men pretending the night hadn't pressed against their tents like a listening ear. Ryan said nothing about the sound he'd heard circling them. Why spoil the calm with ghosts? He told himself it had been the river, or maybe his own heartbeat rearranged by paranoia. Lies make good breakfast companions. Matt found the footprints first. He was stretching, bleary-eyed, when he noticed something etched into the mud beside his tent. 2 lines of prints, perfectly parallel, wrapping around the camp like a belt. Hooves, then human feet. Hooves again. Human again. Each one placed with the kind of precision that belongs to things that have all night to practice. Luke counted them, whispering. Once around. Exactly once. Wind, Derek said, already trying to reason it away. Animals cross. People too. Coincidence. But Ryan crouched and touched the soil. The prints weren't indented. They were cooked. The mud was gray, crumbling to ash when he rubbed it between his fingers, as if heat had risen from beneath. He didn't mention that. Some truths die faster when kept quiet. They packed early and moved deeper into the woods, the air getting colder though the sun had climbed. Branches sagged under invisible weight, the bark painted with strange resin stains that caught the light like wet eyes. Every few miles they found new signs, tracks that started as deer and ended as something taller. Maybe it's that local legend, Luke said, half joking. That, whatever, the deer man. Matt snorted. You believe that stuff? Luke shrugged. I didn't, but we're following something that changes its own footprints. Maybe it's just 2 animals overlapping, Derek offered. A stag and... He stopped. A head, half hidden in moss. A tree trunk bore a mark. A handprint smeared in dark sap, long-fingered and distorted. It wasn't placed at human height. It was higher, near where an elk's antlers might reach. Ryan stepped back. We keep moving. They found an old path carved by forgotten boots and followed it to a clearing. A decayed wooden sign leaned against a stump. The lettering was Portuguese, faded and split by age. Only one word was still legible. Ane with tilde passe. Do not pass. Matt laughed too loud. Well, that's an invitation if I ever saw one. No one laughed with him. By late afternoon they made camp again, closer to the river this time. The air smelled of copper and pine sap. Their tents formed a small triangle around the fire, as if geometry could defend them. Derek cleaned his rifle. Luke sketched the prints in his notebook, maybe for proof, maybe for sanity. Ryan kept scanning the treeline, eyes adjusting to movement that wasn't there. As twilight fell, the forest began its strange symphony. Frogs, crickets, the wind's lazy hum. Then, between it all, A rhythm again, steady, deliberate, too clean to be random. Hooves, then steps, then silence. Luke raised his head. "You hear that?" Ryan nodded slowly. "Yeah." Matt forced a grin. "Probably deer. But deer don't walk in perfect circles." The firelight quivered. Beyond it, shadows pressed together like a crowd waiting for a show. One of them, taller, thinner, moved against the grain of the darkness. Something had learned their pattern, their breathing, their size. Ryan swallowed. Everyone stays inside the circle of light. No one leaves it. "Got it." The others nodded, rifles resting on their knees. The forest leaned closer, listening. Somewhere out there, branches cracked under careful weight. Once, twice, then came the sound again. Those patient steps, tracing a ring around the fire. The circle was perfect, and this time it was closing. Funny thing about circles, they're meant to protect, but sometimes they just keep the prey from running. The forest was alone, breathing around them. Each exhale carried the scent of sap and something metallic beneath it. The men stayed close to the fire, rifles like talismans, eyes like coins reflecting flame. Luke tried to keep talking, because silence was a kind of permission, but the words stumbled out of his mouth and didn't go far. No one was listening anymore. Beyond the glow, something shifted between the trees. The sound wasn't footsteps now, not exactly. It was closer to weight being tested, like a creature unsure of its new legs. Matt swore he saw a shape between two trunks. It stood upright, too still for too long, and when the firelight wavered, it melted into the dark again. He said nothing. Pride and fear often sleep in the same bed. When the first tent zipper moved, they all froze. The sound was delicate, a slow metallic hiss, like something tasting its way inside. Ryan's tent. He turned, rifle trembling slightly. The zipper stopped halfway, then began to close itself, smooth and quiet. "Wind," Luke whispered, but there was no wind. Not anymore. The forest had gone utterly still, as if every living thing was holding its breath. They didn't sleep. Not really. They drifted in and out, counting the seconds between noises, waiting for dawn. It never really came. Only a dim light that looked borrowed, not earned. When they stepped outside, the world felt rearranged. The circle was still there. Only now, it was deeper, pressed into the soil like something heavy had danced around them all night. The fire pit was cold. Not extinguished, cold, like it hadn't been lit at all. And then they saw the dog. It had belonged to Derek, an old hunting shepherd that had followed them on countless trips. The loyal kind that slept near the tents and growled at the dark, so they didn't have to. Now it lay a few yards away. Its neck bent and an angled bones weren't meant to remember. The face gone. Not torn, taken. Smooth, empty skin where eyes, muzzle, and teeth should have been. Luke fell to his knees. What did that? Ryan raised a hand. "Don't." His voice broke halfway through the word. Derek walked toward the body, silent, his expression somewhere between grief and disbelief. He knelt beside it, pressing a shaking hand to the flank. The body was still warm. Matt paced near the edge of the camp, scanning for movement. "Could be a bear," he said. "Could be." "Bears don't walk in circles," Ryan interrupted. Something brushed the back of Matt's neck, a breeze or a whisper, and he spun, flashlight cutting through branches. For a split second, the beam caught a pair of legs. Too long, too thin, bent the wrong way. He blinked, and the shape was gone. They packed in silence. Nobody said it aloud, but the plan had changed. Reach the truck, leave the valley, forget everything. But the woods have their own geometry, and roads that exist in sunlight often dissolve by noon. They walked for hours, and somehow returned to the same riverbank, the same circle of blackened prints that ringed their camp like a curse drawn by steady hands. Ryan stopped. chest heaving. We've been walking in loops. Derek turned to him, face pale. No, he said softly. It's been walking around us. Something cracked in the tree-line. Not the dry snap of twigs, but the thick sound of bone bending until it remembered what it used to be. A shadow detached itself from the trees, tall and trembling, head tilted, antlers brushing against branches. For the first time, they saw it move. For legs at first, graceful, deliberate. Then it straightened, vertebrae snapping into place one by one. Each sound like a wet applause. It stood upright, the skull of a deer, the posture of a man, and from the hollow sockets, eyes that belonged to something that had been both, and neither, for too long. The forest went silent, as if listening for what would break first, their will or their skin. There's a reason hunters fear silence more than growls. Growls tell you where the teeth are. Silence means they're already behind you. When the creature vanished back into the trees, it didn't leave with speed. It slid. One moment there, the next. It was simply absorbed by the forest, as though the branches themselves had learned to close behind it. The four men stood frozen for a full minute, the fire crackling like an animal trying to escape. Then Matt broke first, exhaling a curse too quiet to mean anything. Ryan's voice came out steady but drained. We pack. Now. They tore through camp like soldiers under fire. Hands trembled, zippers snagged. One tent ripped, but no one stopped to fix it. Derek stuffed ammo into his jacket, eyes darting toward the tree lane after every sound. The forest answered with its own rhythm, low creaks, tiny collapses, breath beneath bark. They started north, following the compass Ryan swore was true. It wasn't. The arrow trembled, spinning twice before deciding on nothing. Luke checked his phone GPS. No signal. Just static, as if the coordinates had been replaced by the heartbeat of the forest itself. They moved anyway. The deeper they went, the stranger the air felt. Cold where there should have been sun. Heavy where it should have been open. The ground sloped though it shouldn't have, and shadows bent toward them, stretching with interest. Ryan led the way, rifle ready. Every few steps he stopped, listening. Not for something following, for something pacing them. After an hour, they found another clearing. In its center, a circle carved into the dirt, wider than before, burned into the earth like a brand. Inside it lay tracks, spiraling inward until they vanished at a single point. The point was nothing but loose soil, as if something had been standing there, waiting for them. Derek lifted his rifle. We're being hunted. Matt barked out a nervous laugh. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic. Derek snapped. You saw it. That thing. It's not running from us. Luke interrupted, pointing. It's duplicating. He was right. Around the clearing, new trails of hoof and human prints spread like veins, dividing and twisting until they formed mirrored patterns. Some led toward them, others away. There were too many, more than one creature could make. Maybe it's... Matt started, but the words died in his throat. A voice called from somewhere behind them. Hey, over here. It was Matt's own voice. The same tone, the same inflection, only thinner, stretched, like it had been pulled through teeth before being spoken. Ryan turned sharply, rifle raised. Matt, I'm here, Matt stammered, pointing at himself. I'm right here. The voice came again, closer now. Here, from the trees emerged a figure. Same build, same clothes, but wrong in all the ways that mattered. The face was Matt's, or trying to be, but the eyes were too far apart, the jaw slightly off-center, the skin shifting like it didn't quite belong to the bones underneath. Jesus Christ, Luke whispered. The false Matt smiled, the gesture wide, unpracticed. Don't shoot. Then it tilted its head, and the sound of bones snapping filled the clearing. Ryan fired. Once, twice. The figure convulsed, but there was no blood, just a release of air, as if he'd shot through something hollow. It collapsed, then disappeared, not fell, not ran, simply ceased to exist. Matt was shaking, whispering to himself, "That wasn't me, that wasn't me." Derek grabbed his shoulder. "It's copying us. Faces, voices, everything." "Why?" Luke asked. Ryan looked toward the trees, expression hollow. "Because it's learning." They didn't realize until too late that one of them was missing. Derek. Gone. They searched the clearing, shouting his name, but only the echoes answered, and some of them weren't theirs. Then came his voice. Soft. This way. They turned, flashlights slicing through the dark. The beam caught the side of a tree. For a moment, the bark looked carved, lines forming something like letters. Ryan stepped closer. It wasn't letters. It was skin, thin sheets of it, nailed flat against the trunk, drying like paper. And on one of them, a patch of flesh still fresh and trembling. A face was taking shape. Derek's. Eyes half-formed, lips trying to move. "Help me," it whispered. Ryan dropped the light. The forest seemed to inhale. From the dark, something large began to crawl, bones popping with each movement, antlers scraping against bark. Luke screamed. The thing rose, half man, half stag, wearing Derek's skin like a new coat. The hunt had reversed. You know, some say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but when the forest starts imitating you, you should probably stop flattering it back. The forest never went dark again. It dimmed, as if light itself had been chewed thin. Ryan, Luke and Matt stumbled through it, the air thick with wet ash and the memory of Derek's last scream. They no longer spoke names. Every word felt like an invitation. They reached another clearing by accident, or design. The ground here was soft, pulsing faintly beneath their boots. Roots coiled near the surface, slick and red. In the middle stood a tree wider than a truck. Its bark split open down the center, like a mouth made confession. Inside, something glimmered. Ryan lifted his flashlight. Hanging within the hollow were faces. Dozens. Pressed flat, translucent, eyes half open. Some were strangers. Some weren't. He saw Derek. He saw the dog. He saw himself. Matt broke first. He ran, not away from the tree, through it, tearing past the hanging skins as if he could outrun reflection. The forest swallowed him in one motion. A second later came the sound of snapping branches, then silence. Only silence. Luke whispered, "We can't leave him." Ryan answered, "We already did." They turned toward the sound of water. If they could reach the river, they could follow it out. But the path bent strangely, leading them back toward the same tree each time. Every turn was a repetition, every step a rehearsal. The woods had become a labyrinth of memory, and it remembered them better than they did. Then the smell hit, copper fur decay, and something sweet, like sap boiling. The creature stepped out from behind the trunk, tall enough that its antlers scraped the branches. Its torso was longer now, reshaped by fresh anatomy. It wore matte. The skin hadn't settled yet. It sagged in folds, eyes blinking out of sync. When it opened its mouth, two voices spoke at once, Matt's and something deeper, older, like stone grinding against bone. "Why run?" it asked. "When you were made to circle." Ryan fired. The bullet tore through its shoulder. The thing laughed, a dry, broken sound that rattled the bark. Then it reached toward Luke, and where its fingers touched his face, the skin copied, like wax taking a new mold. Luke screamed as his own features peeled away and slid onto the creature's palm. Ryan grabbed him, pulling free what was left of a man who no longer had a face. Luke collapsed, gasping through raw muscle. Ryan dragged him toward the river. half carrying, half pleading. The creature followed, slow, confident, its hooves clicking like a metronome counting down the inevitable. They reached the water. Mist rolled over it, thick as milk. Across the current stood something carved from bone, an altar made of antlers, every one engraved with spirals. In its center lay a hollow that pulsed like a heart. The same circle burned beneath their feet. Ryan understood then, this wasn't hunting. It was inheritance. He set Luke down gently. The man was still breathing, shallow, eyes wide where I should have been. Ryan looked at his reflection in the water and saw the creature standing where he should be, not behind him, instead of him. He raised his rifle, pressed the barrel beneath his chin, then stopped. The reflection smiled first. When villagers found the campsite days later, the tents were unburned, the rifles clean, the fire still smoking faintly. 3 sets of hoof prints circled the perimeter. Inside one tent hung a mask made of something soft and pale, stitched at the edges. It was shaped exactly like Ryan's face, eyes closed, lips relaxed, as if finally at peace. At dusk, hikers claim they still see figures between the pines. A deer that walks upright, followed by 3 shadows that move just a little too human. Sometimes the forest answers when called by name. Sometimes it only listens, because it already knows your voice. People love to believe nature forgives. It doesn't. It remembers, patiently, until it can wear your face and finish what you started. Thanks for sitting by the fire. If you're heading into the woods, take only what you can carry, and none of what stares back.